Morning, everybody. Happy Friday. Happy what feels like maybe our first summer Friday. We're finally getting some good weather. Really excited about it. My name is Jessica Kubicki. I work for the Housing Collective. We are so excited to have you all here. This is our second of three of the Landlord series that we are putting on in collaboration with the United Way of Greater Waterbury, really to kind of share what is it like utilizing subsidies from the landlord's perspective, what kind of clients are going into units, which I'm really excited about. We're going to talk about today. And for next month, actually, we're going to be doing a peer-to-peer. So we're going to have a landlord driving and facilitating the conversation in July. So today, I have the privilege of introducing a wonderful colleague of mine, Gavin Titus. He is with the Gibbons Homeless Outreach based in Waterbury. The unique perspective, though, that we wanted to give today was around who are the clients that are going in? Because I think there's this stigma that we have seen over the years that clients that go into housing are automatically going to be the ones that trash units, that don't pay their rent, that, have people in and out. And yeah, unfortunately, there may be those instances, right? But those are actually really few compared to all of the successes and the clients that successfully get into housing, stay in housing, and are successful, right? And everyone deserves housing. And so, Gavin, I'd love for you to join me and share all of the amazing stories that you have. Awesome.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Jess. Good morning, everybody. My name is Gavin Titus. I am the outreach worker for Gibbons Homeless Outreach. We serve the greater Waterbury area, so the surrounding towns as well. So let's get into it. Screen. So, like I said, my name is Gavin Titus, and this is Gibbons Homeless Outreach, and we're going to go into a little bit about who the tenants are and the clients that we serve. So some of the objectives that we're going to go over, who are the unhoused? So going into detail about some specific demographics, the resources for you guys, the landlords, and we'll go over some ways to support our tenants that have mental health and substance use issues. And at the end, we'll leave it up for some questions. So a little introduction. I was born and raised in Milford, Connecticut, so about 35, 40 minutes west of Waterbury, about 25 minutes north of Danbury. I studied social work at Western Connecticut State University, and I graduated in 2022. I was fortunate to have begun with this program back in 2021 as a senior level intern and was hired right off the bat, right out of college, and haven't looked back since. Just a little overview of our program. We are a outreach program who serves the greater Waterbury area, like I mentioned, and we are a 501c3 as of March 2022, which means we are an official nonprofit organization. We provide resources and hope to the homeless community. The mission of our program is to locate, engage, and support the homeless and those at risk of homelessness in the greater Waterbury area in an effort to make appropriate referrals that lead to affordable and safe housing. So the next section is about who are the unhoused. So some of them listed are veterans, domestic violence survivors, and individuals living with disabilities. So for the veterans, after leaving the service, many veterans, they face some significant challenges, such as physical injuries, untreated mental health conditions, such as PTSD, bipolar disorder, and even depression. People who are escaping domestic violence situations are more commonly finding themselves in a homeless setting at some point in time, to escape their current situation. And individuals living with disabilities, the people with disabilities are disproportionately likely to experience homelessness. There are point in time counts that suggest nearly 1/4 of individuals experiencing homelessness have a disability, including a physical one, intellectual, and developmental disabilities, as well as mental health and or substance use disorders. Some other unhoused individuals are the elderly. Due to recent Social Security cuts, we're seeing a big rise in the elderly population becoming homeless. We are seeing people as old as 80 come into homelessness. I think in our program, the oldest person we've had was 83 years old. The youth are also in the unhoused population. Connecticut school districts have reported a sharp surge in student homelessness in the last few years, as the number of students lacking a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence has jumped by around 1,500. Um, as I mentioned before, those that are dealing with mental health and substance use, we experience individuals having symptoms of mental health challenges, substance use, or even sometimes a combination of both. So more of the demographic is middle-class families. Due to the rising cost of goods and honestly everything else in this world, more middle-class families are beginning to struggle to pay bills and even put food on the table, with some families sadly becoming homeless due to the rise of goods and costs of everything. Another one is the LGBTQIA plus community. They face difficulty in trying to find support services, especially since some may be harassed in shelters or by peers or even sometimes staff members, and therefore they feel uncomfortable and they feel kind of second class or pushed to the side, and they feel unsafe seeking help, or they'll feel judged or not wanted to talk to or anything like that. Another one that we see is college students. In 2020, the Hope Center for College Community and Justice conducted a survey of more than 195,000 students. Of those surveyed, 58% reported experiencing basic needs insecurity, such as some form of food insecurity, homelessness, or housing insecurity. So here are some of the challenges that our clients face when becoming homeless. The first one is loss of trust in society. They tend to disconnect from the outside world. Uh, some of our clients, they might have accidentally burned a bridge with a family member or a friend or even a loved one to where they become homeless in their situation. And as I mentioned, for the LGBT community, losing trust in society after being judged or mistreated in any way, that tends to lead people to try to disconnect from the outside world. They feel forgotten, and they just don't want to end up working with people unless you build that trust back. Another challenge we see, obviously, is a lack of food, water, and clothing. Um, People dealing with a lack of income, or even if they have any income, some clients that we see are working towards gaining income back to get back into society. Another challenge that we're seeing is people are unable to focus on their mental health or their substance abuse. Being outside, being homeless, it's a daily survival for our folks. Trying to find a safe place for them to lay their head at night, for a handful of our clients is very challenging, due to mental health issues they may have, not liking group settings, or even just dealing with substances. Finding a place for them to rest their head at night can be very challenging, as is the lack of shelter availability. In Waterbury, we do have the biggest shelter in Connecticut, but it is not handicap accessible and it is usually full. So clients are usually having to wait a bit of time to get into the shelter, and they get put on the shelter wait list. Another one of our challenges is lack of transportation. Clients have medical appointments they need to go to, housing appointments for their vouchers and things like that. Having a lack of transportation kind of hinders them to end up succeeding and moving on from their current situation. Here are some numbers for the unsheltered population. In the Northwest Can, there were 89 verified unsheltered individuals as of May 15th of this year. There were 16 elderly individuals, 26 domestic violence survivors, and 7 youth under 25 years old. In 2024, there were 134 unsheltered veterans in the Northwest Can region. And in 2025, so far, halfway through the year, there are already 60 unsheltered veterans. And lastly, 283 households have gone through the Northwest Can this year. That means they've called 211 for any type of service, whether it be housing, transportation needs, food insecurity, and things like that. So the next part of our little presentation is to how to support tenants and those that struggle with mental health or substance use challenges. And sometimes even both of these challenges they deal with. So according to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, people experiencing homelessness present unique treatment challenges, as both treatment and housing needs must be concurrently addressed for treatment to be the most effective. So what behaviors do we see? These things that we see out in the field, dealing with clients over the phone or in our office or hearing it from other agencies. A lot of clients, like I mentioned before, have some avoidance in society, not wanting to trust people. It takes a lot for people to build trust back with some individuals. They sometimes have a low frustration tolerance. They tend to get agitated a little quicker than usual, given the circumstances. Also, our clients are currently still dealing with addiction and sometimes mental health issues such as depression and anxiety to be able to deal with the current situation they're in, to try to work towards building trust back with friends, family, to try to work towards getting income again. The society they're in, it just makes it sometimes a little tough, but that it gets a little over demanding as well, and many more. So what can you as a landlord offer? Here are some of the things that we see that have worked with clients in the past. Here are active listening, patience, empathy. Resources and support are a big one, making sure that they have the proper services if needed, to help them succeed in the future. Clear communication and boundaries is another huge one. Setting boundaries with your tenants and clients that we deal with so that they don't overstep, that they don't do something wrong, that they are constantly trying to work towards success. Some ways you can do that is just meeting them where they're at. Not everybody's perfect. Not everybody is on the right track at every given time, but our folks just need that constant support. So another way is educating the other landlord friends in the community that it's a person-centered language. It's we need to keep meeting people where they're at. We need to just work with them, talk with them, and hear them, and make them feel wanted and appreciated in this world. So speaking of some success, here's an example of it. In our program, we had a woman in her 60s who was living with her spouse in Waterbury, I would say about 6 or 7 years ago. She was a former LPN and was working up to 80-hour weeks at some times. Unfortunately, her spouse passed away and she was unable to pay her full rent where she was living. And due to that, she was evicted in 2020. And also due to her becoming homeless, she ended up losing her LPN job due to lack of transportation, missing appointments, missing work days, this, that, and the third. So once she lost her job and her spouse, she began to use substances. And being in the community and the environment that she was in, it was kind of a way for her to stay safe and feel protected. Having people around her, and those things are obviously in the mix. So she just said, all right, it's a way to keep safe. And my supervisor and I encountered her early 2024, and we met with her once a week or so just checking in, providing supplies if needed, and providing case management for her. But she wasn't housing ready until about June of last year. And we luckily were able to work with her as well to address her substance use. And in the fall of 2024, she entered a detox facility for the first time. And, working with her, calling the access line to try to get her into treatment, she was very hesitant. And every time we were denied a bed, she would get more and more agitated and more of, all right, you know what, let's do this tomorrow. Let's do this another day. But we continued to work with her. We continued to talk through it, talk with her, and let her feel heard to get to a point where we got her to a program. And since then, since about October or November of last year, she's maintained her sobriety. And we also were fortunate enough to get her connected to a permanent supportive housing voucher through Apex, and she's been housed since February. So I'm very proud of her and the work that she's done and the work that she's put herself through and the success that she's continuing to show in this world. So here's some of the language shifts and thought processes for dealing with some of our tenants. So here's some ways to reframe ways that you're talking to with some of our tenants and build an understanding that many of our tenants are doing the best that they can with what they have or even with what they're offered. So an example of this is my tenant is an addict who only uses drugs. Shifting the language to my tenant is struggling with substance use challenges. They may need support or resources, and their addiction doesn't define them as a person. So, addiction could be a temporary thing. Someone could just be dealing with a tough time in their given state. Homelessness is definitely a way for people to fall into addiction. Having that in their surroundings constantly is just sometimes a trigger for people, and getting them connected to the proper supports and the proper resources as soon as you can is probably the best way for them to get sober first off, and to get them to a place in their head to where they can feel comfortable and work towards success again. So here are some types of interventions for stepping in to work with tenants. Building rapport is a huge one. So constantly talking with the tenants, figuring out what you like, what they don't like, and making sure that there's always a safety plan for them as well, and for yourself too. Like I mentioned before, clear communication and clear boundaries, setting boundaries with our tenants is a good way to have a good collaborative relationship with one another and to get the best out of each situation. Another one is resourcing. So having them connected to different resources in the community is a good way to keep them on track and to keep them focused on their path to success. So here are some of the benefits of working with us or any other agency that may do the same type of work that my program does. So one of the first things is there's no need to pay to post units online. We work directly with the clients. We work directly with those tenants that are seeking housing. We help them get connected to housing vouchers, and we can work with them to search for apartments and things and get them connected to you guys so that we can get it done in the most efficient way possible. I like to say we bridge the gap. We're the middlemen to help get everybody where they need to be. Another benefit is that we provide case management, and we also have other agencies in the community that we can get them connected to as well that provide case management for those that need it and for those that need the proper services to continue their success. So another benefit of working with us is rental assistance. So speaking of getting them housing vouchers, the minimum is 70% covered. The housing voucher covers 70% of the payment for our tenants minimum. We can get them connected to certain vouchers that have a case manager attached to it, and also other ones that we can work with them as well. So another benefit is to continue your support of the community, to show support for the tenants in the area and the clients that we serve each and every day. Lastly is connecting our clients to other resources in the community. I've mentioned a few already so far, but here are some of the resources that we could possibly connect them to in the community. First one, for case management, there are multiple different agencies in the Waterbury area and also other surrounding towns that can provide case management for our clients. Some of those involve new opportunities, Catholic charities, or even tenant assigned case managers. So for mental health and addiction supports, there is 211. They are a very good resource for, I like to say, pretty much everything. You can get help for food insecurity, transportation, detox, shelter beds, homelessness, almost everything. Another one is Access Line. That's the line that we use specifically for detox and substance addiction supports. So they have detox beds all throughout the state, and we can call that line with our client present to get them into a detox bed as soon as we can. Another one is the mobile crisis line for 211. So whenever there's a crisis and we need to determine if there's a high level of care needed, we call 211, and the mobile crisis unit brings somebody out to assess the client to try to get them the proper services that they need. And obviously also there is local NA and AA meetings as well for clients to attend. Figure there's probably some almost every day in the community at night and in the morning as well. So in conclusion, the little thing over there, safe, stable housing is a key part of recovery and mental wellness. You know, having a roof over your head, knowing that the people you live around are safe and that you're safe, comfortable, is a great way to help you focus on other things in your life that you may need to focus on, such as working towards your mental health or working towards your substance use issues. You know, having the roof over your head just makes you worry a lot less. So by offering housing, you're offering a foundation for an individual to rebuild their life. You know, I keep talking about the path to success, the steps towards growth and success. You know, offering housing is a great way to set that stone for them to get them to keep moving forward. Many tenants with mental health and substance use challenges are connected to caseworkers, rent subsidies, or even support programs. So even if they're not and they're requesting it, we can work towards getting them connected to it. You know, clients that are in the homeless community, 95% of the time, they are connected to a caseworker, a support program, or a rent subsidy of some sort. We are very fortunate to serve the Waterbury area in the community. So getting connected to those clients is very crucial for us. And with compassion and clear communication, many landlords have long-term respectful relationships with tenants who just needed a chance. You know, I always talk about giving the person that second chance or that third chance. You know, early on in life, some people make mistakes. Not everybody's perfect. And, you know, sometimes all somebody needs that handout. Say, hey, you know, come with me. Let's go. Let's work towards this. Let's work towards what you want in this life, what you want in this world. Showing your support for that individual or building that trust with the individual is a crucial thing sometimes in a homeless situation where they feel forgotten, they feel pushed to the side, swept under the rug, you name it. Building that trust and rapport with our tenants and our clients is one of the main things that I stand by for our work. And just getting people to where they need to be and meeting them where they're at as well. So I'm going to leave up some questions. Hopefully there are a few to answer. I'm more than happy to.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gavin. As Gavin just mentioned, and I know we've put in the chat a couple times, there is a Q&A box at the bottom. Please feel free to put in any questions. I will kind of go through them with Gavin, and hopefully we'll get everything answered. And we may even be able to finish a little bit early today too, which I'm sure everybody wants on a Friday. I actually have one. I want to start with a couple that are like kind of ruminating on my mind. But first, before we even do that, I do want to acknowledge that I really appreciate your presentation helped change the face of homelessness, right? Because I think one of the things that we've seen so much of is landlords almost being scared to work with the population, right? Because of what potentially they may bring with them. The baggage, I mean, right? Like, and it could, and some of it so much is the fact that they were in what you described, these unsheltered situations, right? You gave examples of that. And I think really demonstrating the change and the fact that people who are homeless are now that poor 80-year-old that you were talking about, right? Or the mom with kids. And so I don't want to lose sight of that, I really appreciate the emphasis on that because I think that is just that's the direction we're going with the inaffordability of everything that's happening. The face of homelessness has changed insurmountably, right? That
Yeah,
being
no,
said,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I like I mentioned before, I started in this program in 2021, and within these 3.5, 4 years, this work has changed literally a whole full 180. You know, dealing with middle class families, dealing with the elderly, dealing with the youth, children. It's crazy. But the main thing that we're trying to do is break that stigma. Like you mentioned, some landlords are potentially scared to work with somebody that is working with a case management agency, or oh, they were homeless and they were evicted from a place. I'm not sure. But that's what we're trying to do today. And in our everyday work is to try to break that stigma that it could just be anybody in a bad situation in a tough time that just they need that extra little handhold for however the time may be, and just building that trust with them to show that, hey, no, you are important in this world and you are worth it. You are worthy of continuing and building that success in this life and contributing.
yeah, absolutely. So you obviously had slides around the value add of working with us, right? And I think those are all really great selling points when we try to do landlord engagement. What about, can you talk about, because obviously this whole series, this three-part series, is also really to demonstrate that landlords are our partners too, right? We value and understand that we can't do our job without the housing and without landlords, right? And so can you maybe dive in just a little bit more around, even when they're housed, the value and the relationship that's maintained between staff and landlord during the tenancy and why that's also so important, right? So it's not just we're here, we get them housed, and then bye, right? Like what does the rest of that tenancy really look like on the surface?
Yeah. So, we always want to make sure our clients are safe in their new unit that they get put into. We also want to make sure that they're comfortable financially to where they're able to make support for themselves to where, down the road, they won't need that voucher eventually. We help people get put onto Saga Cash Assistance. We help them get set up with food stamps, which is SNAP. Um, some of our clients also they have supplementary security income. I think that's SSI, and then they also have disability income as well. So just trying to make sure that they have those proper supports and financially first off, but also getting them connected to soup kitchens, to the food pantries and things, so they can still be able to maintain in that housing unit and also just to continue on with their success.
Yeah, I think all that makes sense. And I think also, as far as I know, right, just engaging with the landlord on a regular basis, right? So, like, making sure that if tenants have portions, right, not waiting until the landlord flags for you, hey, the client hasn't paid in 3 months, but being very proactive, right, around like, hey, just checking in, it's the third. Did you get anything yet? I want to work with them on it. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I feel like that, I'm imagining, right, that that would really help develop the level of trust that you referenced, right? Like, then when this landlord has another unit or is turning something over, they're going to you instead of posting on whatever site because
Right.
you develop that relationship with you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, we try to help people build budgets as well. Once they do get a specific amount of income, we help them try to save money to where in a situation where yeah, their money's tight for a month or so. They have that rainy day fund we like to call that they can go to and use. And also I mentioned we're like the middlemen. We bridge that gap. So having that relationship with the landlords and the tenants at the same time is big for us to try to bridge any sort of communication gap or whatever type of gap it is. We help them get connected and to one another to where the relationship just continues and it's flowing and then everybody's happy and safe.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a feeling. So thank you. I guess so not seeing any questions. So I'm gonna keep going. So I don't know if people want to keep hearing me talk, right? So I can go for a
Go
while.
for
I
it.
just want to throw that out there. So feel free, obviously, if anyone does have questions. But Gavin, I'd also kind of like to hear you gave a really great positive story. Any chance you have maybe another one that, you always think of those lingering ones that stick with you because it was really challenging and really successful getting them into housing. Um, I'm wondering if you could share maybe another one that you've experienced because you also, sorry, like I hope people are realizing, and I'm assuming they have at this point, you're dealing with people unsheltered. Like if they're in the shelter, right, that's great, but that's not technically who you all are working with. Yes, obviously through our landlord engagement and everything else, right, we're working on housing everybody. But we're talking about people who, whether by choice, whether they couldn't get in, whether whatever the rationale, they don't feel safe or comfortable, are in the elements of some capacity for an extended period of time, which is very challenging and the most visible, the most, I think, impacted by everything, right? And so I think those success stories are just so like that helps the entire community. So maybe throw in like another success because I love hearing these.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got plenty of stories to tell. I could be here all day, honestly. Um, but so yeah, you mentioned that I deal with the unsheltered population. Yeah, I don't deal with those that are in shelter, but like you mentioned, it's awesome that they're in shelter. They have a roof over their head, they're comfortable, they're safe. But yeah, I go to people's tents, to their abandoned buildings, the cars that they're using or just sleeping in. I meet them where they're at. That's a big portion of our job is meeting them where they're at. We don't bring them to an office. We don't meet them in some fancy building. We want to make them feel comfortable and say, "Hey, no, we're here for you, and we're gonna meet you here. You don't need to feel, bombarded by coming into our office, seeing all these fancy papers and posters on the wall and seeing this big stack of papers. They're going to get intimidated by it. Whereas we go there, we show up with a bag of food and a blanket and, some water and things for them and just say, hey, how you doing? You okay? Like, what's going on? Can I offer anything to you? Or what's going on? Tell me your story. And sometimes they just want to have a conversation with somebody. They don't even want food. They don't want water. They're just like, oh no, I just wanted to be heard. I just wanted to tell my story. And thank you for coming and listening to me. A lot of my day is listening and absorbing and taking in a lot of things. Um, what was your first part of the question? Oh, success story. Yes, sorry.
Yeah.
So sorry, I just kept going and I
No,
forgot.
I love it.
But yes, success story. So back when I was an intern, actually, there was this, I think she's probably almost 70 now, actually. She was living in her car, and her husband was in and out of the hospital. He unfortunately had to have his leg amputated due to diabetes. And he, like I said, was in and out of the hospital. I think when I dealt with her for about a year and a half or so. I think I only met him about 3 times. He was in the hospital that much. It was just that crazy. And so she also, former nurse as well. So she always had that instinct in her of, oh, something's wrong. Go, no, go get treated, go get taken care of. Um, she's a very prideful person, very passionate, and wouldn't take a lot of our supplies that we offered to her. She mostly just said, help me get housing, help me get back on my feet. So I would always go to see her car once a week, and her and I would just have a quick chat, and I'd bring her a coffee, and we would just sit and talk for almost an hour once a week, just about anything. She would just go on to tell me about, some stories back in the day of her high school days, hanging out with friends and things. And it just got her to a comfortable point with me to where, we could work together to, like I mentioned, she wanted housing. So we worked towards that. And, after about 8 months to a year of getting documents, building the trust, working with other agencies and everything to get that voucher, she was housed. And she's been housed ever since. So it's been about 3 years now. And she checks in with me about every 6 months or so and wishes me either a Merry Christmas or a Happy June. So super happy for her, super proud of her. And her husband's doing well now. He's doing okay. He's still struggling a little bit, but they're in their apartment, they're safe, they're comfortable, and they're working towards that success.
That's awesome. Well, and I think you just highlighted two different things, right? Someone who used to work, right, and was part of the community actively as a nurse,
Yep,
however, ended up in their car. So again, someone who very much part of the community, all the things, because I feel like there's also stigmas of those that are unsheltered, are lazy or don't work or whatever the case may
yeah,
be.
absolutely.
I
Those two stories, it's those two people, all they knew in their life was to give back and to give to their community. And now that they're they're in a bad time, why it's time for their community to step up and help them.
Exactly. And the other thing, I'm assuming, right? But you mentioned the husband, you only saw him 3 times because he was in the hospital so much. He's stably housed now. Yeah, he probably still has medical concerns. I'm assuming, right? Like that didn't disappear, but I'm assuming
Right.
it's probably easily managed and maybe less in the hospital, which again wraps around to this whole housing, relationships with landlords. It helps the entire community because then it's less expensive, right, to keep them in housing than to keep utilizing the hospital or
Absolutely.
the emergency rooms and all the things. I know I'm saying everything, obviously, but just making that full circle. So
Yeah,
we
no, I think they even got a visiting nurse that comes by to
awesome.
check in on him, and he's got medications and things and physical therapy and all that jazz. So, having somebody come in and check on them is very crucial.
Awesome. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing. So we got a question which I think it's fair to say is really becoming a bigger challenge, right? So this one in particular, and this is actually one of our colleagues that works in a municipality, had asked around how do you work with landlords for those that maybe have poor credit, no credit, which I hear sometimes is worse than poor credit, right? Or background checks. And again, based off of some of the stories that you had said, evictions, things of that nature that's why they're unsheltered. When you're doing, so this is more on the landlord engagement side, right? How do you
Mhm.
keep finding housing and doing the job when we keep getting hit with more and more kind of pressing challenges um, in getting people housed?
Yeah, no, I mean, I will say it's not easy. It's definitely not easy, but case management is the big part of it. To build a relationship not only with the client but also with the landlord to make sure that, hey, no, I'm working with so and so over here to stay in this place. I'm going to help him budget. I'm going to help him, work towards employment, work towards cash assistance, whatever the case may be. we try to work with them to get that comfortable state of where, yeah, when we have to present the case, oh, yeah, they got evicted a year ago. Understandably so, but here they have a job now. They're connected to us. They're connected to another agency here that is helping them work towards their mental health issues or their substance use, whatever the case may be. Um, just showing that there is support behind the individual that is seeking the housing, I think is a big part of that.
I think that makes sense. It sounds like so much of it is also the existing relationships that you might have with landlords, right? Because I think if you're going to someone new, that might be harder to sell the like, I'm working with them. Not impossible anymore, but I imagine, right? And so I think and I think Waterbury is good for this. There are a lot of landlords that have consistently worked with you all. I know that's not in every community, right? But allow you to continue to engage and allow you opportunities for them to, and this would, I think, more of a landlord's view on like take the risk, right? Because they understand that you're actually good for what you say. Um,
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough to deal with a fresh new landlord that we've never worked with in the past. But I think, word of mouth is a very good way to keep our name out there and keep our tenants good names out there. Showing the constant support for our tenants and our clients that we serve, I think is a good way to continue those relationships with the landlords and to build more and more relationships with other landlords too, to show that, hey, no, this agency, no, they're on top of things. They're always checking in with their clients, about once a month or whatever the case is. Certain clients, they require certain a little bit more treatment, a little more care than others that are a little more self-sufficient sometimes. But just constantly showing the work that we do and building the relationships each and every time that we get a new client and a new voucher housing opportunity. I think that's one of the main things to show those new landlords that, hey, no, yeah, sure, they have an eviction or they don't have good credit or previous charge of whatever the case is, showing that we can bring those two together and help them work towards success, work towards building their budget, work towards uh, sobriety, work towards their mental health issues, everything like that to help them lead towards success.
Awesome. So we had somebody ask two different questions, so I'm going to break them up for you. So the first, and I almost feel like this is more of a statement because I actually really like the way this is written now, but it says, would you say getting rehoused allows tenants to reframe, that's kind of in quotes, their life outcomes?
Yeah, no, I
I
think
feel like that should be a statement. I don't
that
know.
is a good statement. Yeah, no, it is a good way for people to essentially start over, start fresh. Say, hey, you know what? I'm gonna put the past behind me. Sure, I made some mistakes. Sure, I effed up a little bit, but here, now I got this opportunity. Now I'm not gonna waste it. I'm not gonna miss out on this. I'm gonna work towards getting a job. I'm gonna work towards my sobriety, work towards my mental health issues. I'm gonna keep building relationships with my case manager, my landlord, my build relationships back with their friends and family even sometimes, is being the case manager and the outreach worker, helping give the client their confidence back to get their groove back to say, you know what, yeah, no, I did it in the past. I can do it even better now. Like watch me, essentially. Yeah, no, that is a great statement.
I was gonna say I really liked that. Okay, so the other question, same person. And I wonder if it makes sense to go back to, because I know you briefly touched on this in one of your slides, but maybe just reiterating again the benefits to the landlord of engaging homeless clients, right? Because again, it's fair to assume that landlords sometimes think I'm taking a risk in working with you all. And how do we sell that there actually are benefits? So I know you briefly went through that before. Maybe let's touch on it again really quickly, if you don't mind.
Try to go this one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you see taking a risk. I think landlords, they take a risk anytime they deal with a new person. whether they're attached to case management or not, whether they're unhoused or unsheltered or not. Could even be somebody that was living for 3 years in an apartment, paying every month rent, and oh, here's just this new person coming in. They could be a totally terrible tenant. You never know. So I think every time there is a risk that you're taking, and having the case management supports behind it for that tenant, I think just proves a little bit more that they are working towards that second chance, that third chance, even sometimes a fourth chance to get back on their feet. And sometimes, those first couple situations where they got evicted from a place or they were forced to quit from their unit, could have just been a tough circumstance or a tough time they were going through. A spouse passing away, losing their job, just like that. COVID was a big thing. We saw a lot of individuals resort to homelessness due to losing their job or a reduced amount of hours or whatever the case is for their job, to where they don't have that same income that they were getting 6 months ago, to where I can't pay my rent now and I have to go to homelessness. So they had those uh, signs of success, and could have just been a bad circumstance in their life that put them in that situation too. um so I that yeah, I think that's a good one.
Awesome. I don't see any others. I just want to give another quick pause, make sure if there's any other lingering questions, people have opportunities to ask while we're paused for a second, just waiting on that. Just a reminder that our third series is actually going to be in July. And again, I know I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to be bringing in one of our landlords to really talk about what his experiences have been like in working with the population. And I love him dearly. He's going to give you the good and the bad, right? Like, no one's going to tell you everything is perfect by any means. As Gavin said, that could be, he has lots of units, right? That could be the case with anybody. Um, but continues to come back, continues to rent to the population, and I think really feels like the collaboration with the CAN and the homeless response system is so a part of his kind of I was going to say mission, but that doesn't really sound right, but kind of, right? Like the equivalent of that. And really wants to be able to give back to his community. So I'm excited about that one. I think we're good, Gavin. So I just want to thank you so, so much. You are so clear and eloquent on really the face and understanding of all of the great work that you do from before housing, which I will say is just as important as once they get into housing, because all of it sets them up for staying housed and being successful.
Of
So
course. Thank you for having me on this thing. I'm more than happy to share the stories and share the information of what we do every day. And, like you mentioned, it is important from that beginning first conversation to the last one that we're continuing the trust, we're building rapport, we're helping them work towards success, and just showing up for them. Just to say, hey, we're here for you. That's the biggest part of it. It goes a long way.
I couldn't agree more. So thank you for your time. Thank you everybody else for joining us today. We appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful Friday and rest of your weekend, and see you all next month. Thanks all.